right, good evening, everyone. I am calling to order the Committee of the Whole meeting on March 2nd, 2026. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Cressman and seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor? Very good, carries unanimously. Okay, no closed session this evening, and our territorial land acknowledgement will be read by Councillor Martin.
We've gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant in the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you for that. There are some additions to the agenda this evening. The following additions were made, and that is specific interest allegations. Linda Lapel regarding 11.3, Barry Wolf regarding 10.2, Barry Wolf regarding 11.6. May I please have a mover and seconder for the adoption of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Sadhu, seconded by Councillor Martin, and all those in favor of adopting unanimously. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, okay. There are no presentations this evening. So regarding delegations, there are 3 specific interest delegations. And just a quick reminder to all delegations of the guidelines for participation. So for those of you that are joining us to speak in person, you'll proceed to the podium when you are called upon to speak. If you do conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate removal from the meeting. 1, interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegates, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning your camera on at inappropriate times, hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegates, or delegations, excuse me, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. Although it is rare, I would like to remind delegates and members of the public that failure to adhere to appropriate decorum may result in your microphone being muted and or removal from the meeting. Out of respect for all meeting participants, I kindly ask that those in the gallery please remain seated unless exiting the chambers and avoid personal conversations and expressions of support or opposition to those speaking in order to allow everyone to hear the proceedings as they occur. This evening, there is no correspondence, which brings us to consent agenda. Are there any members of council who wish to raise a report from the consent agenda? Okay, so seeing none, I am going to poll because we have a registered delegation for item 10.2, which is the 2022 People Plan. We will invite Delegate Barry Wolf to come and speak to that item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens. There are 444 municipalities in Ontario. They're creations of the will of the province of Ontario. And the OMA says, it is the purpose of municipalities to be responsible and accountable governments, and for the purpose of providing good government. It's subjective when citizens get to define the term responsible and accountable government and good government. A fair and reasonable citizen might expect that good government would include honesty, transparency, the provision of fulsome, accurate information to its residents, citizens, taxpayers, due diligence to investigate the accuracy of all information that comes to the attention of all employees and representatives, a system of internal and external communications with checks and balances, good government's procedures to fill its commitment to transforming community engagement and consultation processes in a way that encourages greater openness, accountability, and citizen participation in decision-making. Good government would be a comprehensive system of record-keeping, such that all communications and their documentation is retained for internal and external confirmation for accuracy and for potential future decision-making. Good government would be a system of financial record keeping that ensures that all contractual commitments by all parties are tracked and commitments by all parties are fulfilled. Good government would be a standard of transparency that discloses the contents and findings of contracted reports to the people who paid for these consultants' reports, especially when the contents are not subject to FOI. A fair and reasonable citizen in Ontario might expect that a municipality would confirm with all parties, internal and externally, by applying scrupulous due diligence to the accuracy of information that comes to its attention. Let's consider the example of an imaginary municipality that received a report from its CAO on, let's pretend, May 16, 2022. In this report, the CAO stated they had contracted with a consultant. Let's, for discussion purposes, call that Weitzel & Company. And they contracted to conduct an organizational structure review and people plan. Council was wondering, where did this come from? The CAO reported the project, quote, was launched to the corporate leadership team on Tuesday, April 12th. What does the term launched to mean? As it turns out, nothing. When you know it, some nosy citizen recognized that there was no council meeting, public, closed, or committee held on April 12th. Guess what? The launch to was an immaculate conception. The CEO of this bewildered municipality just made it up, created it from thin air. Let's imagine that on May 16, 2022, the CAO then introduced the consultant to council, who proceeded to give him an organizational review, how it related to strategic plan, and all those other fancy words that people from more than 50 kilometers away get paid big bucks to produce. That nuisance citizen again was wondering, where was the final report? What did the citizens get for the purposes of good government from this originally reported investment of approximately $64,698.15? There was a realization after the citizens submitted an appeal to the FOI Commission in Toronto that, son of a gun, somebody's onto something here. What happened to the report? Where was the final report? Nobody knows, it appears. It disappeared. It was never presented to the municipality's council for consideration, direction, and potential implementation because apparently it did not exist. It's unfortunate in the case of this imaginary municipality that the nuisance citizen got caught in the fiasco of internal communications gone off the rails. And that citizen was reported to the local police for possible unethical behavior. In the case of this imaginary municipality, it was very difficult and actually intimidating and victimizing to be an informed, inquisitive participant in the democratic process as a citizen, tracking decision-making and spending of tax dollars. The municipality, this imaginary municipality, had budgeted $65,000 for the consultation. A CO report on March 3rd, 2025, totaled the cost at that point at $90,800.95. $65,536 for this consultant Weitzel, $17,808 for another consultant on purpose leadership, $5,797 for another consultant, Culture AMP, $1,659 for miscellaneous. This imaginary municipality recently received a report stating that this Weitzel cost was $71,971.93. If you revise the Weitzel amount substituted in for the March 3rd report, that comes to $97,235.93. It's rumored in the province of Ontario that this unfortunately beleaguered municipality also hired another consultant, Strategy Corps, to do the entire project over again at an additional cost of about $100,000. $97,235.93 for the initial report, another $100,000 for the fix-it-up report. That's about $197,235.93 for one final report, one single project. The final report is 35 pages long, and it works out to about $5,635.35 per page in the final report. A fair and reasonable citizen would maybe scratch their head in dismay if such a municipality was to describe its actions as an example of trustworthy leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. In under time. Any questions for the delegate? Okay. I did have a question for staff in terms of just seeking clarification. I realize that you've written the report here in terms of presenting what happened, but for the general public that are watching that may not have read, CEO Wilmer, would you care to comment just in general your observations and your discoveries in terms of what has happened to the report?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2022, Whitesell and Company was retained by the township to conduct an organizational structure review and people plan. When that plan was close to being finished, Whitesell met with the council of the day. So this is October of 22, close to the end of the term of that previous council, and presented their key findings. And I use the term key findings quite intentionally. So the council received the key findings in a closed session, and this was just weeks before the October 2022 election. Those materials have been provided to the current council in confidence because they were presented in closed session. So the current council has the key findings of Whitesell and Company. There was no final report delivered to staff or council, and so those key findings, I conclude, are the culmination of Whitesell's work. They were paid for that, and their key findings are in the possession of the current council as well as the previous council. And the work that they did also helped to inform the service delivery review that was conducted just within the past year.
A follow-up question, if I may. The delegate did raise that there are varying costs or various costs reported. Initially, we were hearing of a number that could have been between 90 and 100, and then you have reported out 71. Can you speak to that, please?
Through the mayor, a week ago when the same delegation asked how much was the consultant paid for the people plan, we did our research, found out how much was Whitesell and Company paid, and that answer is $71,971.93.
One final follow-up. With regards to a final report, you have heard or contacted Whitesell in terms of what they have, and this is the extent? Or is there anything further that could potentially be expected?
Through the mayor, I have not personally contacted Whitesell and Company. My predecessors have, and in fact, the delegation who spoke tonight has, and everybody has been told by Whitesell is they're done, they're not giving anything more, they don't want to talk to anybody else about this project. So that seems to be the tone and substance of Whitesell's conclusion.
Thank you, CEO Wilmer. One last look to the council. Any questions on either items or to the delegate or the topic at hand? No? Okay. So looking for a mover and a seconder to have the consent agenda on the floor. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Martin. Calling the vote on both items, 10.1 and 10.2. Passes unanimously. Moving on to the report section of the evening. First and foremost, we have item 11.1, which is the Wilmot Heritage and Castle Kilbride Advisory Committee Annual Review. Quickly just bringing forward that recommendation. So the recommendation is that this report, DS 2026-02, Wilmot Heritage and Castle Kilbride Advisory Committee Annual Review, be received for information. Could I please have a mover and a seconder to get that on the floor? Moved by Councillor Martin and seconded by Councillor Cressman. Okay, and we're actually going to start with Director Catania to introduce this.
Thank you, Mayor. Development Services and Community Services staff are required to report to Council on Wilmot Heritage and Castle Kilbride activities on an annual basis. The attached reports to this report itself for Heritage Wilmot and the Castle Advisory Committee were endorsed at the committee meeting of February 10th, 2026. Here tonight is Rachel Green, our Senior Policy Planner, as well as Sherry Gropp, our Curator for Castle Kilbride, to make a presentation as well to Council.
Good evening to the Mayor, Councillors, staff, and members of the public. I'm Rachel Green, Policy Planner at the Township, and along with Sherry Gropp, we support the HCAC Committee. I will speak to the Heritage Wilmot items, and Sherry will speak to the Castle-related items. So under the Ontario Heritage Act, the committee has a statutory role in making recommendations related to alterations and demolitions of heritage properties. In 2025, the committee met 5 times and 4 heritage permits were issued, including restoration work at the New Hamburg Library, removal of the loading dock at 166 Peel Street, also known as the Felt Boot Building, and 2 sign permits, one for the garden stand at 90 Wilmot, also known as the Water Lot, and one at GGFI Law at 82 Huron Street, also known as the Hartman Roth Block. Next slide, please. The committee is also responsible for hosting the annual Heritage Day event, generally held in February during Heritage Week. However, last year's event was postponed to April due to weather. The theme was celebrating Wilmot's heritage families and was held at the new Dundee Community Centre. And here's some photos from that event from last year. Next slide. And keeping in tradition, this year's event was held on February 21st, just a few weeks ago, also at the new Dundee Community Centre. This year's theme was Firefighting Through the Years, which featured presentations by 2 of our committee members and had great community turnout. Looking forward to some key initiatives for 2026. The first is to digitally reproduce the 1992 New Hamburg Heritage Conservation District Plan. Currently, only scanned copies of this document exist, and so the text is inaccessible and the photos are low image quality. So updating the document will improve clarity and accessibility for applicants, staff, and decision makers involved in the heritage permit review process. Committee members will assist staff in locating original photographs where possible or suitable alternatives, but the written content is intended to stay the same, but will be updated to make sure that it's AODA accessible. Another priority for this year is reviewing the Register of Non-Designated Properties before their removal in 2027, which is in compliance with Bill 23. This includes identifying potential designations and organizing existing research and photos into a reference database. So even though these properties will no longer appear on the register, we don't lose all of that good information we have on those properties. And building on previous interpretive signage that the committee has prepared for the Bridge Street and Holland Mills bridges, a subcommittee has been researching additional township bridges, and we hope to get that content on the township's website sometime this year. And then some other long-term initiatives are a potential plaque program to highlight key areas of culture found throughout the township, potential participation in Doors Open Waterloo region. That event usually takes place in September. Updating heritage display cases at the Wilmot Rec Center, and a potential revitalization of the self-guided heritage walking tours that were originally developed in 2013, and possibly having a digital component of those. And so now I will hand it over to Sherry.
Great. I am pleased to present the yearly review for Castle Kilbride. 2025 was another wonderful year for the museum. We welcomed over 11,500 visitors. From recommendations outlined in the Arts and Culture Master Plan, the museum extended opening hours to the public by opening in February for the first time to walk-in traffic. In previous years, we had been open just by appointment. And then we also offered Tuesdays in June, July, and August. The museum was open to the public for 247 days, and total hours equaled 1,324. Our staff is comprised of 2 full-time, myself, the curator, and the fabulous Taylor, our museum assistant. We have 4 casual part-timers, which equals the role of like about 15 hours a week for just 1 person. Last year, we hosted 3 co-op students, and they contributed up to 1,000 hours to the museum, which we were very grateful for. Next slide. For the exhibits, the main exhibit was called Handcrafted Histories from A to Z. It featured crafters and artisans from Wilmot, spanning 200 years from the 1820s to today. From quilts to woodwork, from tramp art to fine art, it was impressive to see the talents of Wilmot's residents from past and present. This was in partnership with the Ken Sealing Waterloo Regional Museum Collection. For the first time, we hosted a student exhibition partnering with Waterloo Oxford District Secondary School. There were over 65 pieces that were on display, and it was lovely to see the students take pride in their work. The Central Ontario Art Association once again chose the museum for their annual juried show. This was called Cross Sections. Our co-op student produced an exhibit called Belvederes in the Belvedere. And of course, finishing the year with our popular Christmas at Kilbride exhibits. Next slide. For events, we continued our classic and popular events such as castle concerts, ghost walks, tea and tours, and castle by candlelight, with some new additions like the I Spy It and Try It, which became popular with homeschool bookings. Whimsical weekends, and a fantastic event called Community Carols at the Castle, which was made possible by a generous grant from the Waterloo Community Foundation. Next slide. Donations. In 2025, the museum accepted many outstanding original Livingston pieces. As you can see here, the Meising porcelain champagne, or Campania, the James Livingston's writing case, an asparagus server, and an 1898 silverware chest that was given as a wedding present by Mrs. Livingston to her daughter Barbara, and it has 158 pieces that go along with it. We also acquired some very cool local pieces, such as this poster from 1926, which features the Maple Leaf Stars versus the New Hamburg Tavistock players. And looking forward to 2026, we are really excited about this year. Our main exhibits that we have feature travel. So we have the trip of 1936, where Laura Louise, who was 18 at the time, and her mother went on a worldwide expedition. It features a lot of the artifacts that were gathered and displayed in the house, throughout the home, including the Meising Campania that you just saw on the last slide. And the second exhibit is called Vogue Voyages, High Sea Fashions from 1912 to 1939. This is a partnership with the Fashion History Museum and features outfits from their impressive collection. The museum will be hosting a record 4 art shows, including the now annual Waterloo Oxford District Secondary School Show, the Ontario Society of Art, and 2 local artists' works. To follow recommendations from the Arts and Culture Master Plan, we are going to be offering new programming such as a summer evening garden party, high sea teas, a princess party, Vogue visits, and potentially a murder mystery that we might offer in 2027 to go with the castle's 150th. That is a quick overview of the exciting things that happened in 2025 and what we're looking forward to in 2026.
Excellent. Thank you to Director Catania, Sherry, and Rachel. Thank you very much. Council, any questions or comments? We'll start with Councillor Sadhu and then...
Thank you. Through the chair, Sherry, I want to congratulate you and your team. I was very pleased to see the growth in numbers, especially with the patrons visiting the castle from 22 onwards. Question for you. For 2026, with the new programming that you're going to offer with small weddings and other events, What kind of numbers are you hoping to drive in compared to 2025? I'm sure we're expecting some sort of growth, but do you have any forecasting for that?
Well, for events that we can host outside, obviously the numbers can be a lot larger than the numbers that we can host inside. When it comes to weddings, we're investigating how many people that we can have with that and how many bookings that we can fit in to our schedule as well. So I don't have any concrete numbers, but we're definitely looking forward to those, especially the summer garden parties, and we're also looking at the princess party as well. With that one, we really want to get more families back in here, so we're hoping that those ones will attract more families.
Councillor Martin and then Dunstall.
Through you, Mayor Wilkinson, I just wanted to thank you, Sherry and your team, Sherry and Rachel and others, Taylor, for the work that you're doing. I think it's great. Attending a number of the concerts in the summer was a lot of fun, and there are many people that come out each concert, so that's really nice to see. I did get one tour in November, I believe it was. Excellent tour, and enjoyed the learnings that I had. So I think it truly is a jewel, the Castle Kilbride, and so just want to thank you. I think you're doing great.
Councillor.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I always look so forward to this report. I really do. I get a little excited about it. I'm not sure if that's a sad thing or not, but I certainly do. I really enjoy it. I love the Heritage Committee. It's keeping Wilmot with the beauty that we have, and of course the castle. My question is, the three top items were the Ghost Walk, the concert, and the Christmas at the castle. Is there any plan to expand maybe a couple of more concerts or a couple of more nights of the Ghost Walk? Because I know that was really popular with a lot of my constituents.
Yes, so for the Ghost Walks, we've established the schedule for this year, and if they do sell out, then we offer more time slots, and then we will also offer other nights as well on top of that. We're also doing a couple of spirit workshops as well, which is something new for us in April and July. And then for the garden party, we're actually going to be having one of the bands perform on the Saturday night to keep that going as well. And sort of a similar thing for the princess party as well, to have two princesses kind of giving like a concert and show on the front lawn as well, because those seem to be what people are looking for. So
Excellent. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor. I guess hopefully the murder mystery doesn't include one of the Heritage Committee members, but we'll wait and see. I guess the question I have is, we have artifacts that are donated, and I know we've discussed at Heritage Committee meeting whether we're open for donations, because we see some of the items for renewal in the castle have been not funded the last 2 years because they were in the budget, but other priorities bumped them. Is there an opportunity, and it might be Director Grewal, or you might know it, Sherry, whether we can collect funds from people in the public for donations against certain capital projects?
We actually did last year receive a generous donation from the Baden Chamber towards the mural project. And so that work is actually going to be starting on March 9th. And so our restoration artist, Laurie Lemaire, has prioritized the things that she sees that need to be fixed inside the castle. So I do encourage you to, Laurie loves to talk to people, to stop in next week anytime to come and chat with her and see the work that she's doing. And we are always open to donations.
Follow-up?
Yes, just to follow up. Is there an opportunity to get that greater publicity might not be but greater scope to that so that it's more general, more widely known? I see Director Catania has.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Cressman, staff right now are working on a comprehensive sponsorship, naming rights, even donations policy. We are looking at bringing something forthcoming to council over the next 6 weeks or so that we can table that. This way, anything that we look at with sponsorship, obviously the castle is an important asset that we have in this community, and I think that, just to your point, when we look at a lot of other assets that we have, there are opportunities out there to help with some of the rejuvenation or replacements, and trying to tap into other sources of funding for that.
Through you, Acting Mayor Wilkinson, just to follow up on the donation question, and I'm not sure who wants to answer it, but it's my understanding people can get a tax receipt that, as I believe, registered charity, is that the proper name or term, that donations can receive a tax receipt?
Through you, Mayor, yes, they can receive tax receipts.
I had a couple questions myself. First and foremost, thank you for the work that you guys do. I mean, I think sometimes our historical assets and our history is often overlooked, and I want to send a big congratulations to the Heritage Committee and the leadership here for the event that was put on for Heritage Day. Just simply, I brought my daughters out, and I brought them a couple times, but they find it very interesting and very engaging, and it's nice to see that interest, because honestly we have to know where we're coming from, and these events and this work basically preserves our heritage, and it's very, very important, so I appreciate that. I did have a question about the items you talked a little bit about bringing in past items that were previously auctioned off. I know that there was an auction to dispose of some of the pieces. Do we have an idea of how much we reclaimed, and are we active in trying to reclaim some of those items?
We like to say we have anywhere between 65 to 75% original furnishings, with things coming back, like obviously all the time. And I know that when we first opened as a museum in 1994, they had the auction records, they knew who was here, and they started contacting people. And I actually just took a call on Friday from someone who had bought a piece, but they weren't looking to part with it yet, but were wondering if we would be accepting it back in the future. And so yeah, it's always exciting, and last year we had obviously a significant number returned, and sometimes you just never know what's going to come in, which is really exciting.
That's excellent. I actually didn't expect those numbers to be so high, so that's great. And just out of curiosity, for the general public and citizens that want to view the collection, I know that times you have it on display or certain items out there, but the wider collection that we keep, can the public make arrangements to view that?
We do. We have from time to time done behind the scenes tours, which people find really, really interesting. In 2022, we had a wonderful rolled mobile storage system put in that people could come in and look at, but we should really look at doing that again. We have done that for Doors Open as well, so that might be a possibility for the next Doors Open.
May I go to Councillor Cressman?
Yes, through you, Mayor. Do you want to just go through, I think you explained it to our Heritage Committee, about people can, if they donate something but they want a receipt, to just go through that process so that they get a receipt equivalent to the appraised value of that item?
Right, so there are processes in the museum field for items that come back to us. So for instance, the silverware, because that is something that's significant. I have the ability to appraise things up to $1,000, but anything over that, we have to go to a professional appraiser who has to give us the fair market value for that, and then a tax receipt is issued from there.
Thank you for that. That's excellent. One other quick comment, or I have a question and a comment, but a comment is I'm happy to hear that we're looking at revitalizing the walking tour. I'm hoping that we can maybe work some technology into that, whether it be through Google Maps or Apple Maps, whatever it happens to be. But it's just a great way for our community to get out and visit the historical places in town and understand where significant figures live. So love that. Glad to hear it's coming back. And then just a question in terms of the small weddings. I mean, I think I see that as a potential revenue driver, which is fantastic. When you say small weddings, how many people are we talking about having, and is it primarily just ceremony that you'd be looking at?
Through you, Mayor, with the introduction of any type of small weddings, it would be more of a small service, not so much of a reception, so there might be the opportunity depending on the location. I think in the past it was held certain services in the chambers, but we can take a look at some specific rooms that are not going to take away from the historical piece of the castle, where we would have up to an upset limit of 10 or 12 people, for instance, that could accommodate that. And then we still have in our fees and charges bylaw where services can still happen outside as well when we look at the front steps or in the grounds of the castle.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? No? Okay. With that, then, I will call the vote to receive this report. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to report 11.2, which is the repurpose of Rescue 627 to a rehab apparatus. To get this report on the floor, may I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Okay. So I'll just quickly read the recommendations. So the report, FS 2026-01, repurpose Rescue 627 to rehab apparatus, be received for information, and that Council authorize the fire service to retain Rescue 627 upon its replacement in 2026 and repurpose the unit as a dedicated rehabilitation apparatus in support of legislated firefighter health and safety requirements, and that no capital funds be requested in 2026 for this repurpose initiative, with a full needs assessment and any recommended budget requests to be presented to Council for the 2027 budget. With that said, I will invite Andrew Michalko, our Acting Fire Chief, to please present the report.
Thank you, through your Mayor. We have purchased a new rescue truck in New Dundee, and instead of listing it as surplus, we would like to repurpose it as a rehabilitation truck. What this means is at larger calls and some training, it would be available to house equipment necessary to provide nourishment, heating or cooling, hydration, and a bathroom and change area. Previously, we had a volunteer organization that would provide a similar service, but they are no longer available. This would be a low-cost solution to provide this service in-house, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Members of Council, are there any questions? Councillor Cressman.
Yes, I was reading this report and understand, I think, the mechanics of it. Through you, Mayor, I think there is an opportunity cost associated with that if it was declared surplus, because then it could potentially defray some of the cost of the new one. I guess my question is there rehab units that would be available from other abutting departments? In essence, when there was this volunteer association that had one, it obviously was shared between departments because it wasn't exclusive to Wilmot. And so I'm asking the question, is there in fact an opportunity to canvass some of the abutting departments and say, does it make sense that either if we do this, that there would be some support from your department if you needed it, vice versa. So I'm just kind of thinking as a revenue stream, either that or to access somebody else's rehab unit on an as-need basis.
Acting Chief.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Cressman, I'm not aware of any other departments in the area that have a rehab unit right now. The ones that were available, I believe, have been sold a long time ago. We actually had that service called, it was something called REACT, and it was serviced by volunteers. And us being in a unique environment, being out in the rural area, we tend to spend a lot more time at calls than, say, city departments. So it's really up to us as an individuals to get the necessary nourishment and hydration things to our crews on scene, and it's really up to the individual departments to look after that.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. This is more of a comment. I did have an opportunity to speak with Chief Michalko today, and I'll be voting in favor of this when it comes up to council. He explained to me that there are many times that our fire department ends up at a site for hours on end. We preach inclusivity all the time, and there are women firefighters who do not have the option of relieving themselves as men firefighters do, not to mention having refreshments or being able to cool down in the summer or heat up in the winter. So I think it's a worthy, I was going to say cause, but I think it's a worthy use of that vehicle. So thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Acting Mayor Wilkinson, I agree with Councillor Dunstall that this seems like a very good purpose, and so thank you, Acting Chief Michalko, for bringing it forward. I'm just curious, how often do you expect to use it? I gather there would be some work to actually make it into a rehab unit, but then would it be used every call, or are there after a certain number of hours, or how often would you expect to use it?
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Martin. Yes, it would be just long-term calls, so sort of a 3 hours or 4 hours. I also at training as well. We go to the gravel pit that is owned by the township, and there are no facilities there at all. We go all-day training for our water rescue team, and we require a simple bathroom as basic necessity. So it would just specifically be used on the longer calls. Yeah.
Any follow-ups or additional questions? Okay. I had a couple myself. I do like the idea that we're looking at reusing our existing equipment. I know that's something that we've extensively discussed over the last number of years. One thing I did have a question on, though, is I know that we're not necessarily looking at capital expenditures related to this item this year, but do you have a rough idea of what we're looking at in terms of cost to modify this vehicle?
Through your Mayor, I haven't done any calculations on that, but it would be very minor. It would be like outfitting an RV when it comes to a toilet. So, you know, you have a toilet, you have some curtains, we have additional canopies, maybe some folding chairs. So it's really simple, not very expensive things. We're not looking to create a Tim Hortons drive-through with this. It's just a simple basic needs for the guys.
And gals, but yes, I appreciate that. Yes, in general, I do think that's a good idea. And just again, for the general public to understand, we're not necessarily approving that this is 100% going to happen. However, we are authorizing it to be examined so that in the future it could be discussed at budget time. Are there any final questions before we call a vote? Councillor Cressman?
Yes, through you, Acting Mayor Wilkinson. I understand they are switching aspects of this rescue into the new rescue after a conversation with Chief Otterbein in New Dundee. So certainly some of the things that we see in the photos will be removed to equip the new rescue, and then it will be adapted from there. So that's
Excellent. Seeing no more questions, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that passes unanimously. Moving forward to report 11.3, the annual summary and water quality report. The recommendation is that report IS 2026-03-2025 annual summary and water quality report be received for information, and that Council confirms its commitment to providing the necessary resources for the ongoing implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of the drinking water quality management standard as outlined in this report. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Dunstall and seconded by Councillor Martin. Okay, I will invite Director Vanderwall, who's Director of Infrastructure Services, to please present this report.
Through the Mayor, this report is provided in accordance with the Safe Drinking Water Act and must be provided by March 31 annually to the Ministry. A key note is, while there remains room for improvement, no orders from the Ministry were received. There was one adverse water quality incident or test that came back not meeting requirements. This is compared to 5 incidents in 2024 and 5 again in 2023. I look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of a technical nature before we bring up a delegation? Seeing none. Okay. I will invite our registered delegation for this item. So, Linda Lapel, please approach to address Council. And you will have 7 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Linda Lepple, and I live and farm since 28 years beside the K50 wells. I came today to visualize for you our fragile water supply system, a system managed in administrative silos locally and provincially. I came to warn how this shared resource with separate responsibilities we could lose, as you are again asked to rubber stamp a provincially mandated water report with blank lines, while everlasting decisions are made in faraway offices having never stepped a foot on Wilmot soil. Next. We are blessed with the purest water in the world. For example, our nitrate standards. In Ontario, exceeding the reading of 10 parts per billion, I think it's believed, leads to a shutdown of a public well. Yes, it happened here in Baden. In Germany, a number is 50. And many municipalities there have trouble to stay under 100 due to dense population and the need to feed more and more people on less and less land. We have the best of the best, land and water, so far. Do we ever question where it's coming from? In this well house, K50, 51, only 10 meters apart, draw water from the same level but measure different for nitrates, and indication water is drawn from 2 different directions to the well. Next. The chart out of a regional report. The red dots are monitoring wells. The blue are the 2 production wells and the newer backup well K53, still sitting in open in the bush behind the mechanical room. Next. This chart neatly demonstrates how much each well had produced between 1998 and 2018, over 80% going into the Mannheim system. Oddly enough, this easy-to-understand chart I cannot find on more recent reports, and it is not in the report in front of you. The value of a pump rate of 120 liters a second to the ratepayer is $20 million a year. Next. Newer reports and the report you are to approve have this chart instead. Next. But what I'm really worried about are the blank lines in regards to water quality. Let's say arsenic, glyphosate, or atrazine residue, or strontium, or whatever. Next. Only the numbers for lead are included. Next. There is an opportunity to comment on a water taking permit. On the left in this chart, you see the K50 wells. In the center of the picture, an outline of the Hallman pit planning to operate wash ponds in the water table. The consultant assured us that the water will flow away from the public wells uphill towards the gravel pit, and we don't need to worry. On top of that, OLT ordered that asphalt recycling is to happen on the pit floor. Next. The hydrographs located around the pit, included next to the dying wetland, the blue dot in the circle on the top, is reflecting the increased pumping at the K50 wells the past few years, giving proof the aquifer is connected to the public wells. Bottom left, the massive irrigation well pump drilled to bedrock and once used to dilute manure was not described or assessed in any studies done for the rezoning. The permit to take water requests mentioned water will be taken from different levels, including bedrock. Next. K50 wells were also not shown in the rezoning documents. Next. Public well records document the irrigation well, seen the deepest in this chart. Next. A historic site picture taken when Ontario's largest feedlot was in full swing and pumping from the irrigation well had an effect on the water table and the wetlands, as we can see in this picture. Now it's the Hallman pit, rezoned. Next. Low overburden map. The low overburden is now licensed to being stripped off and wash ponds in the water table permitted. There are emergency plans and protocols. But, for example, with one bulldozer alone carrying 500 liters of hydraulic fluids in his system, it takes some time to notice a leak. Just one example. Next. The Shingletown wetland is the exposed aquifer, a kettle lake with no outflowing creek. While healthy, it had zero nitrate. In 2025, there was an algae bloom. Not due to any activities in the Hallman pit, but due to overpumping at the public wells. Pump rate numbers council no longer received. Next. The Environment Protection Act used to have an industrial sewage policy for aggregate wash ponds and operations, similar to clean-out policies of store water ponds, as you know, and it's expensive, but potentially far more toxic. In none of the plans presented is there any mention how residue will be handled other than seeping back into the aquifer.
You have 50 seconds remaining.
Today I'm asking for only two things. Do not accept the water report in front of you till all blank lines are filled to your satisfaction. And second, send your comments to the Environmental Registry opposing the water taking permit for aggregate washing in wash ponds sitting in our water table. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lapua. Are there any questions from Council? Councillor Cressman.
Through you, Mayor, to our delegate, where is the, I didn't catch where that unused well that hasn't been used, be K50 and you said K53 is not being currently used?
K52 was drilled in 2017, I believe, and I think it is supplying the 6 liters a second to the Incoran Pond, because it goes into the creek and the creek goes through my property and then over to the Incorans. Otherwise, all that wetland by the church and down would have run dry.
Thank you for the presentation. I don't have any questions, but I wanted to allow you to speak because it was relevant to obviously a topic that I think is on the minds of every resident in Waterloo Region right now. I will say for this discussion this evening, we are responsible for the water delivery system and the testing numbers related to it, not necessarily directly the pumping or the supply of water, which is the responsibility of the region of Waterloo. But I'm glad that you brought this to our attention this evening, and I'll open it up to council if there's any questions of the report for the director this evening. Councillor Martin.
Through you, Acting Mayor Wilkinson, to Director Vanderwall. I appreciate the delegate coming to speak this evening. She's asked us to not accept this report. If the report would not be accepted, what would be the repercussions of that? What's your understanding of what would happen?
Through the mayor, we would have to reach out to the ministry and explain why the report wasn't being submitted at this point. As was stated, this is for the distribution network that we are responsible for. I would surmise that some of the additional parameters for the quality are on the supply side that the region may have. We can look into that and see whether or not we can provide that information that we've got. The testing that we do is generally to ensure that the chlorine levels are adequate within the system, and that is what is in our testing report. So,
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Director Vanderwall, is there a reason why there are so many blank spots, and is there a way to get that information?
through the mayor, the parameters in there are a generic form, so not necessarily required for all systems. Again, I would suggest that since we are a distribution network and not the supply network as well, the additional parameters would be, or some of the additional parameters would be required for the region, for their supply side of it, not necessarily for our distribution where we're testing ourselves, again, the chlorine residuals through the system.
A follow-up?
Thank you. Yes, a follow-up. So are you saying to me that the region has that information?
Through the mayor, I'm suggesting that the region would have additional testing requirements that we can look into. Whether or not they have all of them or are required to have all of them, I don't know, but we can look into that one.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Acting Mayor Wilkinson, to Director Vanderwall. Just so I'm clear, if I remember from last year, adverse effects are remedied by flushing. Is that correct? Not toilet flushing, but main flushings, correct?
Through the mayor, yes, that is correct. They do then flush the system in that area and do another test afterwards.
Councillor
Thank you,
Dunstall.
through Acting Mayor. Director Vanderwall, I believe I read in the report that the previous 2 years had 5 incidents where we had to flush the system, whereas this past year there was only 1. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, that is correct.
Additional questions? Oh, Councillor Cressman.
Just through you, Acting Mayor, any attribution for that? Just the new director? Or?
Through the mayor, as much as I'd like to take credit for that on my own, it just seems to be the way that the staff is working very well.
Out of habit, I almost just said through the chair. I suppose through myself, I do have a couple questions, a couple observations. I did note that you guys identified a compliance issue, and that was noted by the province, and then it was corrected. So glad to see that that's documented and taken care of. And of course, being the representative for Ward 2, I do look forward to seeing obviously more details regarding the Petersburg report when that is finished this quarter. One thing I noted, a couple issues that I wanted to look at was the operator licenses were noted to have been expired. Has that been corrected? Is that an issue? Or do we have other operators that are compliant?
Through the mayor, to the mayor, that has been rectified. All operators are compliant.
Thank you for that. And looking at the report, one other item I noticed here as well is that The incident in the New Hamburg Basin distribution system was dated October 16th, 2026, which is future dated. I'm pretty sure I double checked that, and it was, so I'm hoping that that can be corrected. Hold on, I'll tell you the page. Yeah, on page 2 of 5, or I guess it is 2 of 25 in the total report for the Ontario submission. Incident date is October 16th, 2026. So it's future dated.
We will look into that and get it rectified. I am not aware of one that is planned.
I mean, if you have the key to time travel, I would like to know, but thank you for that. And then I suppose another question that's come up through the conversation this evening, and I thank our delegate for raising the concern, but so there are a lot of blank spaces on here. And you suggested that the region will likely have that information given that they're responsible for supply and treatment. Given that this is committee of the whole and this will be referred to the council meeting at the end of this month, I don't know if we want to put a motion on the floor or if we could give direction. Can you reach out to your counterparts at the region? I know they might be busy at the moment, but to obtain any reporting that they may have on the wells and the supply that we're feeding to the citizens here?
We would be more than happy to take that as direction and reach out for that information.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. One last question, actually, and I just thought about it when you, Director Martin, I keep wanting to make you a councillor. Not a good thing, but I had a conversation with you about the pit and my concern about the water, the gravel pit, and you had said to me that it went from one pond on the property to the other pond on the property, and it did not affect the aquifer. Now, our delegate gave a little bit different information, so I just wanted to get some clarity from you where we sit on that.
Through Acting Mayor, I'm not going to argue the technicalities of things. Is our understanding, though, from the reports that were reviewed and peer-reviewed, that these are drawing from a shallow aquifer, not the deep aquifer that the wells we're talking about tonight are drawing from. Certainly there's been significant work done from professionals in the field, both from the applicant's perspective and peer reviewers, that indicate there's no concerns, so that's the information we need to rely on.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Acting Mayor Wilkinson, to Director Vanderwall. This might be an unfair question. I guess, especially in New Dundee, we were promised upgrades in the supply well for 2028 because of low pressure and turbidity, and the removal of either manganese, I think it's manganese that causes the turbidity. Do we have any indication that the current quote-unquote water crisis is going to delay some of these planned upgrades as compared to solving bigger issues relating to supply?
Through the mayor, I'm not sure that's an unfair question, but we can take it as direction to look back into it. We have not been advised that there's any changes in their other plans. And I would also point out we are looking at completing a water master servicing plan, which would help us accelerate some of these issues to the region.
I wanted to chime in here. I think, again, just to reiterate for the general public, the township is responsible for the distribution of the water that is pumped and treated by the region. But I think a lot of these questions are super relevant given everything that's ongoing. And I know it's top of mind amongst a lot of residents, basically suggesting, if there's ongoing pumping and if there's changes to the water systems, where does that leave wells that are in the general area? Where does that leave our supply from a Beta New Hamburg system standpoint? So just thinking out loud, I mean, I'm hoping that we can see more information moving forward. And I'm trying to think, unless anybody has any other ideas about information we would potentially want to see. Obviously, seeing the additional reporting on the water quality is of interest. But while we're reaching out to our counterparts for this information, is there anything else that anyone would potentially want to have included? Councillor Sadhu.
Thank you. Through the chair, I would say with the heightened action around water right now, I would say any hydrological reports moving forward, if we could make those public and provide to the public so there is assurance that the reporting is being done correctly and they can kind of do their homework on it. So in the name of transparency, I would suggest that any reports that are done be made public for public consumption.
By Director Vanderwall?
Through the mayor, that is definitely outside the scope of what the township has. We can advocate on behalf of the township to get that information from the region, but all the hydrogeological information and the wells are run by the region of Waterloo, and all that information is theirs. Again, we have no concerns advocating for that, but they are not our information to release, and I'm not sure we even have all of it ourselves.
Councillor Martin and then Dunstall.
Through you, Acting Mayor Wilkinson, just to clarify or follow up on Councillor Sadhu's question, I did watch after the fact the regional meeting from, what was the date last week, the 25th, I guess. So there were reports there. I'm not sure if that's all of the reports that you were thinking about, but, and maybe that's why Director Vanderwall, you're saying it's outside of our scope, and that's a fair enough point. But I did find that helpful to watch that regional meeting.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I mean, this is more of a comment. I'm just getting a little tired of Wilmot picking up the slack for the region's growth. Thank you.
Hear, hear. If I may, just thinking about it, I mean, in terms of hydrology reports, I mean, we often see that through development applications or site plans. To Director Martin, is there a catalog or is it easily accessible to potentially compile the reports that are digitized, that are recent, that would be in the affected area or just a general available for our township?
And that's a broad, but certainly when we do have a development application, we do post the information. So when we're speaking about the Hallman pit, when that was an active application, all the background reports, peer review studies were made available. We can certainly make them available again without issue. But to your point, when we're dealing with a development application, those reports, when filed, are made available through our Engage page that lists all of our development applications. So in terms of a catalog, I would say that pertinent to this discussion, I'm probably not the expert to suggest which ones would be and wouldn't be. Majority scoping that we deal with are, individual lot creation to determine impacts of septic systems on neighboring wells. From a larger perspective, in this general area, I would say that the Hallman pit is probably the best kind of example or development application that would be pertinent to the discussion we're having tonight, and those were certainly made available through that development.
Would it be unreasonable to ask, I realize it's an ask in time of your staff, but can they pull those and make those available again, potentially on a special section of the website? I'm just thinking in terms of general public interest. I know there's a lot of chatter about this topic, and having that information available to the public, whether or not they can utilize it or choose to read it, but just having it there for the sake of transparency. Is that possible?
We can certainly have a discussion to determine where that's most appropriate to live. So when it comes to a development application, we do leave that information available until the development is completed, or in this case licensed. So we do remove it. Whether we republish that, or if there's a better place for that to live, we can have a discussion internally with staff to see what the best approach is. But I don't have an issue making that information available again because it is public information that was available previously. But where it lives and how it's best displayed, we would need to discuss that more internally.
Understood. Thank you. Any additional questions or follow-up? Okay. Seeing none, I thank everyone for the conversation on this. This is going to be referred to the council meeting at the end of the month, and I think just to summarize, we did ask for additional information, mainly just cross-checking the data that the region brings forward or collects on their water supply. So I look forward to seeing that. With that said, I will call the vote to have this referred. All in favor? And that passes unanimously. Moving forward to 11.4. So this is traffic and parking bylaw amendment. The recommendation is that report IS 2026-04 traffic and parking bylaw amendment be received for information, and that council direct staff to present a bylaw to amend bylaw 2016-52 traffic and parking bylaw for council's consideration. To have this on the floor, can I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Shadoo and seconded by Councillor Cressman. I will invite Director Vanderwall again to present this report.
Through the Mayor, this report is an update to our traffic and parking bylaw. Staff intend on bringing an annual report on this information. The key points within this report are a change to Puttycombe Road and Bridge Street, heavy truck prohibition on the portion of Whitmer Road from Sandhills to 1.6 kilometers east of Sandhills, as well as no parking on the curb of McFadden Street to help with sightline visibility. If there's any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, acting Mayor. To Director Vanderwall, I was part of a group with Amy at a local establishment that has a camera on this intersection, and we saw the two collisions that occurred over the family holiday weekend. And I guess the question is, is there a way to bring this forward into action quicker than waiting to the end of the month to approve? Or do we see that as necessary to get a reaction from those involved that it would impact?
Director Vanderwall.
Through the Mayor, we are recommending a four-way stop there. If council wishes, we can proceed with the signage prior to it, but it cannot be enforced, is my understanding, until the bylaw passes that would update it. So we can do all the infrastructure changes, but if it gets challenged, it cannot be enforced until the bylaw is passed.
And to Councillor Cressman, I just spoke to the clerk, and she informed me that essentially in order to get this moved up, we would need to pass the bylaw, which would require a council session, which is not scheduled for this evening.
Okay, I think we'll leave it the way in our normal procedural process. One of the concerns with the people at the elevator is not that it would, whether it would create a challenge when trucks pull out of the elevator heading north up Puttycombe, and they come to a full stop at Bridge, and then people try to pass them because they're impatient with this lumbering truck as it tries to gain speed up the hill. Now, people being people, I guess you can't keep people from doing what they're going to do. But that was one of the concerns, not that they said they were against it, they just asked the question whether that's anything to be worried about because of the hill it would mean people would be passing on a solid line to get past this truck that was coming to a stop at the four-way stop and then trying to accelerate up the hill. That's just a caution. I just throw it out there as a piece of information.
Through the mayor, I would suggest that the warrant change due to accidents at the location. So your concern is probably not invalid. However, the warrants do now meet a four-way stop, and we would be prudent to install a four-way stop at this location.
And if those, and I think just to have the public clear on that one, if the warrants were ignored, then there would be liability that would flow to the township, correct?
That is my understanding. That is correct, yes.
Councillor Shadu.
Thank you. Through the chair, my question was about McFadden, but before that, I want to circle back to the four-way stop. In order to pass this sooner, we would just have to do a special council vote on it, or what was the procedure for that?
Can I refer this over to the clerk, please, for explanation? Is it possible this evening?
No, through you to council. Council does need to sit as council with the bylaw on, with public notice to pass that bylaw, so that can't be done this evening.
Okay. So moving on to McFadden, this piqued my interest as it is in Baden and a busy subdivision area. I see that this was brought on by complaints and emails to the township from residents. I had an opportunity to speak to the residents on the curb of McFadden and trying to get an understanding of what the issue is. So in talking with the residents there, they essentially are purposely parking their vehicles on the road to slow traffic down because they've had a lot of incidents of cars going too fast down the curb coming south on Huntsberger and getting too much speed and going over their curbs onto their sidewalks. So essentially they are doing it on purpose to slow vehicles down. So I'm almost wondering, would it not be a better use of resources to possibly, I know this was brought up by them, on Wagler and Huntsberger there is a through street, and I know eventually there's going to be part of that intersection that's going to connect to a future development. Would that not make a little bit more sense, just so if people have to stop at Wagler and Huntsberger, chances are they'll make a left and use Wagler as a street instead of going through McFadden. In return, that would slow vehicles down because they would be at a full stop and they would not gain the speed at the curb at McFadden.
So through the mayor, I want to be clear that we are talking essentially two different issues here. The parking restriction is because at the curb, if we've got cars parked on one side and the other side, we can't get emergency vehicles through. So it does create a problem that we need to address, which is being addressed here. If the root cause for the parking on the one side is due to excessive speeds, we can review that under our what do we call that policy, the speed enforcement policy that we've got going on, and look at whether or not there are modifications that we can make to the area to improve traffic conditions, slow down traffic while maintaining emergency vehicle spacing.
Councillor Sadu.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the right page as far as if we can look into that prior to passing this no parking on both sides of the road. I did talk with some residents and I said, what if it's only on one side of the road? So in fact, it will help with sight lines and emergency vehicles that should they need to go through there, they won't be cars parked on both sides. But being a bigger picture, I think speeding is a necessary thing to focus on here with the residents continually, and I've talked to them and I've heard about it in the past that is something of concern. So is there something we can get back as far as the feasibility of just having no parking on one side with also looking at the speed mitigation moving forward?
So, through the mayor, I will look into it in greater detail. My understanding was that it was only on one side that we were prohibiting, but I will see again how it was worded and double check that one. So yes, before council, we can either have it removed and not considered at this point, or bring back a different recommendation for McFadden by itself.
Councillor Sadhu?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm just looking at it here. It does say, in fact, that the bend on both sides of the right-of-way is recommended, so thank you.
As a point of clarity, I actually wanted to bring this up. I made a note of it. I wish I had just brought it up a minute sooner, but the recommendation related to McFadden is that there is no parking on both sides 60 to 100 meters south of Betchen Lane. Looking at a map, that would appear that Betchen Lane is obviously, it's a lot further than 100 meters away. I think it's almost 400 meters to 450 meters away from, I think, what we're referencing here. So I'm wondering, is it intended to be the first curve, which was technically Huntsberger at the intersection of Michael Myers, Stuckey, and Huntsberger, or are we discussing further down past, or I guess that is south of Wagler, which becomes McFadden? And I don't know if it's possible to get a map up just so we can maybe be very clear. Google Earth, maybe? Just a moment while we clarify this. There's two bends in that particular road, and I'm not sure the wording is overly clear. We can give the director a moment.
So, through the mayor, I would like the opportunity to take this back to staff and review that component of McFadden Street, bring it back as requested. My understanding was it was the earlier curve, but as you say, as it is written, it does not seem to indicate that one. So with council's permission, I'd like to take this back to staff and review it.
Okay. It would be looking to bring forward an amendment to have this deferred to staff. So moved by Councillor Dunstall. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Sadhu. Okay, so the motion on the floor, just to be clear, is to defer this report to the council meeting. Okay. The motion on the floor is that we refer item 11.4 back to staff. The only thing that we could discuss at this point would be time and place. So I assume we are looking. Oh, yeah, Councillor Martin.
It's true, you Acting Mayor Wilkinson. So if we can only discuss time and place this, I guess you can stop me if I can't say it. Couldn't we separate them? Because if we have the Puttycombe Road, which has more urgency, McFadden, isn't there a way of separating these?
Sure. Give me one moment just to clarify on the rules. I haven't sat in this chair before, so one moment.
See what happens. That's how democracy goes.
Okay. So the best way for us to go about this, and we'll have to have the mover and seconder agree to an amendment here, but we'd be looking to amend your amendment so that it is that the McFadden item come back at a separate date, but that we will essentially separate it out and refer that piece back to staff. The other items we will continue to discuss. Everyone's agreed to that. Okay. And to Director Vanderwall, is that agreeable?
Yeah, there's no issue with that. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So, are there any questions then on the time and place related to bringing back the McFadden suggestion? So right now, I believe it is set for the next council meeting. Okay, So voting on the amendment, which is to refer the McFadden as a separate item back on the, what date is that? March? No, okay, okay. March 24th, next council meeting then. All in favor of that amendment? That passes unanimously. Okay, so back to the amended motion, which is to discuss the remaining items for Puttycombe Road and the heavy truck prohibition on Whitmer Road. Are there any additional comments or questions on those items? Councillor Cressman?
Yes, through you, Acting Mayor, to Director Vanderwall, I assume the Whitmer Road prohibition basically starts at the Hallman pit and extends to Sandhills. Is that correct?
Through the Mayor, that is correct, yes.
Any additional questions? Okay. I did have one. Just in regards to the cost for these installations and modifications, I'm just curious what really drives it. Is it more material, or is it the labor that would drive the cost of making some of these modifications and installations?
Generally, the labor costs are higher than the materials cost for the installation of signs. Sorry, I'm trying to find my report where we gave you the numbers for it. They should not be extremely high for the installation of a sign, but it is generally that.
I believe you quoted about $610 to install a sign. That's per sign, and that's staff time, signage, material, field installation labor, and equipment costs. So
that is correct.
And
yes.
it's primarily labor that drives up that cost.
It is primarily labor that will drive up that cost.
Okay. And we do these installs using our own field staff?
Generally, we will do this with our own staff, yes.
Okay. Any final questions? Seeing none, in that case, to vote on the amended motion, all in favor? And that passes unanimously. Moving on to item 11.5, the infrastructure asset condition and investment needs related to sanitary and water. The recommendation is that report infrastructure asset condition and investment needs sanitary and water IS-2026-08 be received for information, and that water main and sanitary sewer repair program be referred to the 10-year capital forecast as part of the long-range financial plan. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover and a seconder, please? That's moved by Councillor Cressman and seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Okay, I will now invite Adele Keys, to the Air Infrastructure GIS Analyst, and Dot Roga, Manager of Engineering, to please present this report. Welcome.
Good evening. Through the Mayor to Council, my name is Dot Roga, Acting Manager here at the Engineering Group. I've been managing engineering projects for over 30 years, so my expertise came into play with a lot of this evaluation. We've been assisting this team to develop a long-term pipe renewal program that we will present this evening. Now, the Township recognizes that a rehabilitation and replacement program is needed to address the aging infrastructure, particularly as it relates to water main and sanitary mains and servicing. In Wilmot, residents and businesses receive both water and sanitary services in New Hamburg, Baden, and Mannheim. This study focuses on Baden and New Hamburg, as the majority of Mannheim's water and sanitary infrastructure was constructed from 1990 onwards and is not a current concern. New Dundee, St. Agatha, Shingletown, and Petersburg are serviced by water. The Petersburg system is currently in redevelopment. The needs of New Dundee, Shingletown, and St. Agatha water services will be better understood once the Township directs the completion of the Water Master Servicing Study. Wilmot's stormwater system was not included in this assessment, as the completion of the Stormwater Master Plan is anticipated in late 2026. So for this purpose, background studies were completed to support the evaluation of the most critical needs for underground infrastructure and road needs. This evaluation produced 19 of the most critical infrastructure repair sites. This report, included in the agenda, presents those 19 sites, their current conditions, and the proposed works to address the current infrastructure concerns. This presentation will specifically look at 4 of those sites as examples of the proposed work. This proposed work recommendations do not encompass all the necessary reconstruction considerations, any class municipal environmental assessments. It serves as a general guide to the infrastructure repair projects that will be proposed in the years to come. The following section outlines the data sources used to evaluate and compile 19 proposed repair sites. And I'll hand it over to Adele to talk to you about that.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Adele Keys, and I'm the Township's Infrastructure GIS Analyst. I'm going to walk us through the 5 data sources that were used to inform this evaluation, and we'll start with age and material. So age and material information was extracted from the Township's GIS, and this data stems from 1950 onwards. There are many different materials used within Wilmot sanitary main and water main systems, and these all have slightly varying lifespans. You can see in the chart here that there are just over 5 kilometers of active water main that the Township of Wilmot maintains that are made of either asbestos cement or cast iron that are approaching the end of their lifespans. And similarly, when we look at the active sanitary main system, there's just over 11 kilometers of sanitary mains that are also approaching the end of their useful life, and these are made of asbestos cement, concrete, and vitrified clay. So this age and material information serves as a reliable benchmark in the study that we built upon with the following additional sources of data. So the engineering department administers an annual CCTV sewer inspection program, and for this study we drew upon the results from the 2023 and 2024 inspections. CCTV provides detailed and accurate condition information as it records deficiencies such as leaks, damages, and failures. And in this map here, you can see the results of the study and how they were ranked from highest priority to a good state. So in this slide, we have an example of what you might see in one of these CCTV inspections. This is from an inspection that was conducted in 2024 at Hastings Court in Baden, and this is one of the areas that is proposed to be repaired. It's one of the 19 sites that we're presenting today. So you can see in these screenshots there are some significant deficiencies. There are multiple points where there's significant incrustation. There's a service gasket that is dislodged, and there's even a crack in the wall of the sanitary main. So these are the types of deficiencies that lead to a sanitary main like this being assigned a value of requiring immediate repair. A third data set that was considered was the roads needs study. This was completed in 2023 by Thurber Engineering, and the primary deliverable of this study was the assignment of a pavement condition index, which I'll refer to as a PCI in this presentation, for all of the roads that the Township of Wilmot maintains. This data was considered when determining if it was more cost-effective to rehabilitate the underground infrastructure or to plan for a complete road reconstruction project. There we go. The fourth source of data that was included was the inflow and infiltration reduction and capacity management study. This was completed in 2024 by the engineering consultant firm GEI. And there were 3 main objectives of this study: to complete a sanitary wet weather analysis, to update our sanitary sewer model, and to develop a prioritization list for sewer areas in need of remediation. And you can see those sewer areas are mapped here, where the areas that are considered priority 1 are in red, and it's suggested that these be repaired within 1 to 2 years. Priority 2 areas are in orange, and it's suggested that they be repaired within 3 to 5 years. And then priority 3 areas are in yellow, with a proposed repair area, a proposed repair span of 5 to 10 years. This project also provided an up-to-date assessment of a selection of sanitary sewers within Baden and New Hamburg, prioritizing them down to the sanitary main, and this was also drawn upon in this study. The final source of data that was examined was historical water main breaks. This map displays the annual number of water main breaks per 100 kilometers of pipe of some surveyed municipalities. And it's worth noting that the national average across Canadian municipalities is 10.9 water main breaks per 100 kilometers of pipe. And the township of Wilmot sits above that at 12.74. Water main breaks have been an ongoing challenge that the proposed repair and replacement program aims to address. On average, each water main break cost the township $17,000 in repair costs. And you can see that in the last 3 years, this has amounted to between $150,000 and $200,000 in cost per year. And I'll pass it back over to Dot.
So once all the information was in hand, it was added to the GIS network and developed into maps that we're showing you tonight. The evaluation considered the age, condition, material type of both sanitary and water mains. If both sanitary and water were deemed at risk and the road condition was considered poor, having a low PCI, and there was a documented history of high I&I, infiltration and inflow, they were flagged as full reconstruction projects. In areas where sanitary mains were deemed at risk, but the water main was in good condition, or vice versa, a pipe renewal program is recommended if the pavement condition was reasonable. The areas of most concern are noted as in others, red as oldest and most critical, with failures imminent. Orange should be rehabilitated now by industry standards. Yellow is showing signs of failure and needs. And green is new or relatively new with no obvious needs at this time. So when we look at the sanitary mains, we've got mains that were installed in 1950, and they're well beyond their useful life. The I&I that occurs within the sanitary network also costs the township, as that additional volume of clean water entering the sanitary main gets treated by the region at a substantial cost. So limiting the I&I in the township will save money, which can then be used to rehabilitate more underground infrastructure. Relining the mains and the services to property line will dramatically decrease the additional volume being treated and allow the main to use its full capacity to service more properties. There was a video that we were going to show, it's included in your package, just showing the benefits of the sanitary sewer relining program. So for water mains, same thing. A lot of these were installed in 1950s and well beyond the end of the useful life. The materials are generally asbestos concrete, asbestos cement, and cast iron. And the water main breaks a little more of a concern than sanitary because there are some health concerns that can come out of poor water mains. And commissioning emergency repairs are costly. And the risk of property failure is likely in areas where mains have been installed under existing heritage buildings with no easements or access for repair. We have a few hundred meters of water main that we have no legal access to, and that is a cause of concern. This water main concern has to be addressed with a multi-year program of rehabilitation, pipelining, or reconstruction, starting with the areas in red and continuing with orange and yellow areas as budgets allow. Relining the sanitary and water mains is less disruptive and more cost-effective way to extend the life of the current assets. Relining techniques can be applied to aging and degraded infrastructure, including cast iron pipes, so long as the hydraulic capacity is maintained and if there's no need to upsize the main for future development. To the right, there's an average cost comparison between the relining and reconstruction. So within the 19 proposed infrastructure sites, 60% of the sanitary mains are 200 millimeters in diameter and therefore would cost approximately $275 a meter to reline. To the remaining 40% range from 250 millimeters to 450 millimeter diameter, which translates to approximate cost of $350 to $675 a meter. So this evaluation has produced 19 infrastructure sites. The estimated sum for these proposed repairs is approximately $10.7 million. This report serves as a general guide to the infrastructure repair projects that will be proposed in the year to come. Now I'll hand it back to Adele to go through some site-specific highlights.
Thank you for your patience. So as mentioned, this evaluation identified 19 proposed repair sites throughout Baden and New Hamburg, and I'm going to take the time now to walk us through 4 of those sites. 2 in Baden and 2 in New Hamburg, and these 2 sites were selected to represent the range of repairs that are proposed within this project. So we'll begin in Jacob Street in New Hamburg. This is an area where the road is in good condition. It was assigned a PCI, a pavement condition index value of 77 to 85, and that's a score out of 100. The water mains were replaced in the last 15 years or so, and the deficiency of this area lies within the sanitary mains. The average age is approximately 64 years old. It's made of concrete, and this is located within an I&I Priority 2 area. It's also worth noting that 6 of the sanitary main segments on this stretch were identified by the inflow and infiltration study as requiring urgent repair. So in response to that, there would be no immediate road repairs required. We would reline 630 meters of sanitary main, and there would also be no immediate water main repairs required. And the estimated cost of that project would be roughly $250,000. Moving on to a stretch of Bleems Road east and west in New Hamburg. Here we see the PCI is more varied. It varies from 39, which is considered poor, to quite good at 86. Both the sanitary and the water are upwards of 60 years old, and there are 4 sanitary mains that were identified by the I&I study as requiring urgent repair. This is also located within an I&I Priority 1 area. So here we would propose reconstructing the 90 meters of road that is west of Fairview Street. This is the stretch that has that PCI value of 39. We would do a combination of relining and reconstructing 325 meters of sanitary main, and the same approach for the water mains, which would be 460 meters. And the estimated cost of these repairs would be roughly $850,000. So we'll visit 2 sites in Baden now, starting with Brewery Street. Here at Brewery Street, the PCI ranges from 56 to 76. The average age of the sanitary mains is 51 years old, and they're made of asbestos cement. The water is 44 years old. It's made of PVC. It's worth noting that there have been 2 water main breaks here between 2017 and 2024, And there is a combined 9 sanitary segments along this stretch that were identified as either needing repair or requiring urgent repair. And that was found both through the INI study and through CCTV investigations. So here we would rehabilitate 800 meters of road. This would be a rehabilitation and not a reconstruction because the groundwater is very high in this area. Excuse me. We would reline 785 meters of sanitary main, reline 760 meters of water main. And the estimated project cost would be around $1.5 million. And the final site that we'll take a look at today is Tannery Street in Baden. Here the road condition ranges from 62 to 89 out of 100, and both the asbestos cement sanitary mains and the PVC water mains are an average of 51 years old. This is situated within an INI Priority 1 area, and there are 5 segments of sanitary main requiring urgent repair or requiring repair according to the CCTV and the INI studies. So here there would be no immediate road repairs required. We would reline 520 meters of sanitary main and reline 330 meters of water main. And this would amount to an estimated cost of repairs at around $530,000. So we'll conclude our presentation there for tonight. Again, I just want to reiterate that this report is intended to be a general guide for what is to come. And if you have any interest in taking a closer look at all of the 19 sites that are detailed in the council report, you can visit the link that is attached and you can scroll through all of the 19 sites as we did tonight. And I want to thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you both, Dot and Adele. And I will say I did find the online resource and the graphics quite useful. It was very, very good to see. So I like that presentation. And anybody watching that does follow up and go to look at this, don't be alarmed if it freezes on you a little bit. It is a rather large presentation and documents. There's a lot of resources being used to load it, but it's very interactive. So I appreciate your work on that. Questions from council. I'll start with Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Dot and Adele, thank you so much. This was a very extensive report, and I'm sure it took you a very long time. My question is for the main water breaks, and our number was relatively high. And I would have thought that some of the larger urban centers would have been higher than ours. Is that because our infrastructure is that much older? Is that the reason why we have a higher breakage?
I would surmise that yes, that is why you're the fact that we are looking at sanitary mains 70 years and older is very much the same, and with the water main too. 1950s water mains, they're going to break. They're going to break and they're going to continue to break because you break them, fix one, it'll put pressure back to it, it'll break somewhere else. So that's the problem we have to chase and solve is.
Great, thank you. And just to note, not everything that was done in the 50s breaks, but thank you.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes, I'm through you, Acting Mayor Wilkinson. I was noting some of these areas, especially along Gingrich, where the sewer work had been done earlier. I was wondering, I detected a red line, but I would suspect when they did all that work last fall that new sewer lines were put in there. Am I reading some of this is a little dated to a degree, or is it? I just saw where the intersect and where they had all that, you know, where there was down to half width of the road, etc. It's still got a red streak in it, and does that mean there's other work that we got to rip that up again?
Through the mayor, I'll defer to Director Vanderwall.
Through the mayor, Gingrich Road, that project there did not involve replacement of local sanitary down Gingrich. I think what's recommended in here and I don't have all, or haven't gone through all the details of it, but it's probably a relining then, which would eliminate the requirement for the ripping up of the intersection again. But no, we did not go down Gingrich Road for the local sanitary at that location.
The second, the second question relating, I guess I have two questions. In some cases, you're showing a cross-section of a road that isn't urban. It doesn't have curbs. What happens when you replace the road? Does it become urban? Do you put curbs, gutters, etc. in the process when you replace sewers and water mains? Is that part and parcel of the upgrade?
So the idea of this program is to address the needs of the underground infrastructure primarily. But if the roads are in desperate shape and it doesn't make sense to reline both at a higher cost and then reconstructing everything, and we rebuild the road. The question of whether it's an urban or a rural cross-section would come about from a public information center or some direction within the township. It's not an automatic that you would just urbanize a road that wasn't before because you're replacing sewers. It's just, it makes sense if you're going to look at it fulsomely and look at the needs for the whole thing.
A quick follow-up to Councillor Cressman, and then we'll go to you, Martin.
A priority one area was identified as Stonecroft, and I don't think that's 70 years old. It's all red in there. Is it just that it's an unknown that it's red?
Through the mayor, I'll defer to Director Vanderwall.
Through the mayor, there are aspects of the construction of Stonecroft that are outside our ability to look into. I would surmise part of it was because it was built as a hybrid between a subdivision and a condominium. We are looking at the outlet of it. That is part of the reason we are putting a meter chamber in to check some of the water. And I believe we have put in a sanitary flow monitor in that area as well. So we are looking at that, and hopefully when we get that information, we can work with Stonecroft to address the I&I and the problems from their area.
Councillor Martin.
Through your acting Mayor Wilkinson, I was just curious, and I'm not sure if this goes to you, Dot and Adele, and by the way, thank you for your presentation, very informative, or if the question goes to Director Vanderwall. When you brought up Jacob Street in New Hamburg, it's not that long ago that the road was redone. Why would the sewer lines have not been done then? Was that a decision that a previous council made, or was that a different decision? I was just curious about that.
Director Vanderwall.
Through the mayor, we are starting to look at some of the decisions made in the past. Unfortunately, with our underground infrastructure, it is expensive and does not get the same public response as new asphalt, new other facilities, so it has often been ignored. I would suggest in this case, it was an oversight. It should have been replaced at the time of the construction. That did not happen, and we would rather not go in and rip up that road again, so relining is a perfect solution in this area.
Follow-up?
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to that, does that educate us for future projects? Like, are we paying attention to that moving forward? I'm not sure if we add up the cost of relining and the cost of what it was for Jacob Street in the past. If we're doing a road reconstruction now and we did it all at once, is that cheaper in the long run? I'm just wondering what we can learn from some of these past projects.
Through the mayor, I would suggest that with the information that's been collected and evaluated to date, we have much more opportunity to see the state of each project as it comes to light. So then better decisions can be made because now we have this information collected and it'll be built upon and it becoming a living document for moving forward and proposing projects.
Director Vanderwall, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that in the sense that the reason we're bringing this report to council is to give you a little bit more oversight and transparency on what the data sets are that we're looking at when we do it, so that we can bring you more information and bring you a more informed or a better ability to make informed decisions on it. We are looking more holistically with our infrastructure. We have put a lot of resources into ensuring we understand better. There's more CCTV. We're doing the flow monitoring. We're now looking at water master servicing study. We have invested in the past few years significantly in getting better information, just for the point you brought about, so that we can give you better information and make better decisions for the replacement of our assets.
Councillor Cressman?
Yes, I was, through you, Acting Mayor Wilkinson, I was intrigued on relining and the ability to reline at significantly lower costs if it's suitable. And I thought this, I mean, don't get me wrong, this is an excellent report, and I really liked what I saw. When a wastewater system is encrusted, like some of the pictures that we saw, can you actually reline that if the road doesn't require to be redone? Or does it present significant challenges to reline? I'm just kind of interested on the mechanics of getting that done. Do you send something up it to ream it out, or give it an enema or whatever?
Pretty much. Through the mayor, I will say that to do this program, you have to do CCTV again before you start. Then you flush and clean this out. High pressure, you flush it as best as possible. Then you CCTV it again. And, you know, some of the things like rubber gaskets missing are not quite fixable with the lining program. Sometimes there may be a little sag in the pipe. You're not fixing that with the lining program, but if your hydraulics are good and everything is working, then this approach can be applied to several different types of pipes and varying states of degradation. Cracks can be, you can just go right over them. This is a pretty flexible liner that gets installed, and then it is cured in place. So it sets itself against the walls of the existing and puts a structural element to it that extends it to the life of a regular new pipe. So this is not a Band-Aid solution. This is 50 to 75 years more life you get out of that pipe with the relining program.
Just as a follow-up, through you, Mayor, is there a maximum length that you can reline at any one time? Like you have to do it in segments to... I could have it as a side conversation. I find this is very...
Well, normally we have standard sanitary manhole spacing. So, and this utilizes the manholes for the delivery system. So you're literally lining manhole to manhole. And you can stop at that manhole and come back, or you can start again and continue on to the next run. But you're generally looking at 100 meters maximum between. So that's about what you'll see.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. One of the things I really like about this report is that it gives me justification when the budgets come around. It's so easy to defer things that we can't see, you know, and it gives the public information as to how dire some of these infrastructure needs are, and I think it makes it easier for us to make those decisions. So thank you very much.
If I can add on that, Councillor Dunstall, I think the nice thing about this too is that this program is funded with the water and wastewater reserves. So the general taxpayer, if not a user of the water and wastewater system, is essentially not funding this. This is designed to be funded purely by the users who pay their water and waste bills on a regular basis. So actually, I want to pick up and maybe ask that question. So based on our current reserve balance for the water and wastewater system, is this feasible within the time frame of 5 years that they're looking to resolve the critical pieces? And what will this do to the reserves in that particular account?
Thank you. Through the mayor. So while the township has multiple reserves, they are currently held within one consolidated bank account. And the individual reserves have not been reconciled over the last year. So because of that, I unfortunately cannot confirm the exact available balances of those reserves this evening. However, we are working with KPMG to reconcile those reserves, and we'll report back with updated figures once that work is complete, and that will also be part of our asset management program for this year.
I appreciate that update and surprising information there. Should the water and wastewater reserve not be kept separate regardless? Was that just not past practice?
Through the mayor, yes, it would be kept separate, or it should be kept separate in general. However, it was tracked not through bank accounts, but through Excel modeling and spreadsheets. And so because those haven't been reconciled, I don't have those exact figures tonight.
Councillor Cressman?
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Director Graywell. I would assume that as well feeds into our water and wastewater study to determine appropriate rates on a go-forward basis to ensure that we have the funding once we determine the amount that we have in the reserve, and then what we should be allocating in our reserve so that we have the funds needed to do the renewal on an appropriate basis.
Director Graywell.
Through the mayor, yes, that will all be taken into consideration.
So was another follow-up, Councillor Cressman?
Yes, this was something that kind of tying into an earlier discussion on water quality. When we have a break in a water main, does that cause, I would assume that causes a significant concern for water quality until it's flushed and any contamination after repair of that is, so how long is that mean a boil water or a flush or don't use or whatever?
I'm going to refer over to Director Vanderwall, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Through the mayor, depending on the nature of the break, right, if it's a leak and we don't lose pressure, then it is a simple repair and there is not necessarily a boil water advisory. If it is a significant repair where we are concerned about the quality, then there would be a boil water advisory going on, and then we would continue with all our testing. I'd like to point out the cost of the repair does not include the cost for lost water that you would also have occurring for a water main break. So the estimate you were given is lower than what we would actually be seeing. Again, depending on the nature of the break, it could be significant or relatively minor in water loss, but that has not been accounted for in what we're looking at.
Any additional questions from Council? Councillor Cressman?
Yeah, this is maybe an anticipation of frost coming out, etc. Is it, with the colder temperatures we've had this winter, do we determine that we have our water mains deep enough, or are we changing the depth to ensure that we don't have significant events, or isn't that a factor in what we're seeing? I know you hear about Winnipeg and certain streets suddenly don't have water because they had a cold spell and suddenly the water main was frozen. So I'm just trying to think about design and questions as it relates to depth.
So through the mayor, we would take a look at the depth of them. For water mains, we can measure down at our valves to see the depth. Most of our areas, from what I understand, are at appropriate depth. That being said, we are aware of a few breaks that we've already had this year, so we are hoping not to break the current record that we've got, but we may for 2026, and we are looking at all those components when we go through it, and there is a consideration for it.
Not seeing any other questions, I'm going to, I've got a couple myself, just quickly. Coming back to the financial portion, when this does get forecasted out to the long-term or the long-range financial plan and 10-year capital, as part of your work, could you also forecast what the expected water rate changes would need to be in order to fund this program?
Through the mayor, yes, absolutely. We can look into that and try to forecast that out.
Excellent. I wanted to ask a question as well, and I certainly don't expect exact numbers, but there was a quick discussion this evening about talking about Jacob Street, and the cost to reline that would be about $250,000. Again, knowing that this is funded by the users in the system that was or the capital reserves that were dedicated to this, I see that as a good thing. My question is, there's a conversation around significant savings by reducing the I&I that's coming into the system. You have a rough idea of what kind of cost savings we're looking at, just approximately? And I realize that's a very tough question to forecast on the fly, but anybody want to tackle that one? Director Vanderwall.
The Mayor, I recall we did this in a previous report, and if I remember, we were at a 35% rate for I&I. It may have even been higher than that. We need to remember that while we are looking at our mains primarily with here, we also need to invest in our laterals, and we have programs that we are trying to bring forward for that. I would suggest that we are, in the range of maybe $1 million or so that we are paying to the region to treat clean water that we are hoping to address. Now, we can find that number again through the previous report, but if I recall correctly, it was in the range of just shy of that, if I recall correctly.
Thank you. That's fairly significant. Okay. In summation, I mean, I think council and we find it exciting. I mean, it's certainly maybe not the most exciting topic for some of the residents watching, but I really do appreciate the work on this, and I agree with Councillor Dunsall. This is work that needs to be done and may not always be remembered or at the forefront when it comes time for discussion. So seeing no other questions, I'll call the vote to accept this report. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Moving forward to item 11.6, the final report of the evening is Council Remuneration 2026 to 2030 term. This is report CAO 2026-05. The recommendation is that report CAO 2026-05 Council Remuneration Review 2026 to 2030 term be received for information, and that staff be directed to initiate blank as the review method to provide recommendations to council on appropriate remuneration and benefits for Wilmot Township elected officials for the 2027 to 2030 term. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Sadhu, seconded by Councillor Dunstal. I will now invite CAO Wilmer to present his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Won't say much about the report. It's fairly brief. It outlines as approved in council policy, there are 3 methods that can be used to review as review methods to determine appropriate remuneration for both the mayor and for the councillors. Commenting on them briefly, the Citizen Review Committee, we unfortunately don't have a whole lot of time for that, so that may not be all that appropriate this time around. Independent review consultant, council already did have a consultant report midterm on this, so that you have had already the benefit of that once this term. And then there's internal administrative review, which would be consistent with the approach that both Wellesley and Woolwich are taking this year.
Okay. There is one registered delegation for this item. Before we move on, is there any technical questions or seeing none? Okay, so we will invite a registered delegate, Barry Wolf, to address council. You will have 7 minutes. I will give you a 1-minute warning.
It's really nice to see this free exchange of ideas going on here back and forth and how we're built on each other without being told what to do is great. Good evening, Mayor and Council and citizens. Mark, a friend of mine for 49 years so far, owned a tool and die company. Part of his responsibilities included hiring, training, supervising, appraising, and potentially firing employees. The company produced parts for the automotive and military aircraft industries. Parts had to meet microscopic tolerances of exactness for each and every piece. If a part was not compliant with the standards, it didn't get delivered, it was scrap. His bottom line management criteria was, I don't pay for excuses, I pay for performance. Every decision and every action by every employee had to comply with the requirements of the situation at that exact time. In other words, unacceptable behavior included statements like, I did it that way because that's the way I always done it. Result? Reassignment, retraining, retirement, or replacement. Gone down the road. The mayor has said that the EMO is encouraging a range of candidates to be able to serve. Excellent. However, I constrained this potential pool with some eligibility performance criteria. A pool cleaner is not qualified to run a computer numerical control machine in a tool and die shop. Not everyone is qualified to be a competent municipal councillor. My eligibility criteria include due diligent honesty, residency in Wilmot, probably better if they're actually a taxpayer in Wilmot, a sophisticated ability to read and understand complex documents of information and supporting data, an ability to analyze numbers, to be able to separate the chaff from the wheat, the red herring distractions from the fundamental issue, an ability to synthesize new understandings from consolidated data, an ability to ask probing questions, seeking clarity, transparency, and fulsome accuracy, an ability to comprehensively communicate their observations, requires a strong commitment to speaking truth to perceived power. No BB-kissing sycophants allowed. They take up space and waste time. The mayor implied that a mayor should receive an increase in remuneration because they now have potential strong mayor powers that give, and I quote, and in any other job, if your responsibilities were changed or your scope was changed to that role, a review of that role will be a normal process to go through. The mayor injected the strong mayor powers as rationale for potentially increasing compensation and time, and I will respond to that. I enjoyed Councillor Cressman's astute and accurate observation in rebuttal when he said, you can save a whole lot of taxpayers a whole lot of money. We don't need councillors at all. Just leave everything to the autocrat. It's not what we had going on here. The mayor's response, and I quote, I hear and understand that. And it was just that the mayor, if they choose to exercise now, does have a different ability. The mayor's phrase is an admitted interpretation if they choose to exercise. I'm going to be giving you my details of what you should be getting as compensation remuneration. I'm getting there. This statement seems to indicate a perception that the unilateral right of a mayor to make the choice to exercise unilateral powers should apply. I've delegated on this already. The legislation says it's a local responsibility to determine the scope of a head of council's powers and how they apply in the municipal's particular circumstances. The mayor brought it up. I'm addressing it. The first step you do, the local municipality decides what the scope is going to be. That's not what happened this year. It was a unilateral assumption of power. If you believe in autocracy, that's the way you do it. If you believe in democracy, you follow Guideline 10 and the municipality decides. A strong mayor power tells just about everyone does what to do and doesn't need consensus. If elected candidates, councillors and mayor candidates, meet those criteria that I said and are willing to follow the scope of democratic process of setting up the scope and powers, here's what I think they are eligible to get. Each councillor's annual salary should be at least $35,000 a year. COLA shall be automatic and not subject to cost cutting due to guilt at budget time. Councillors shall receive all the statutory benefits, travel, conferences, in a formal policy to be created under the supervision of council. A mayor's annual salary shall be $75,000 for a 1.0 FTE. A Democratic mayor needs 1.0 FTE because it's more work to be a Democratic mayor who needs to network with 5 councillors to get cooperation, coordination, and get things done as a body. It's harder work to be a Democratic mayor. It takes more time to do it right. A strong mayor power just tells everybody what to do. Don't need to reach consensus. And I believe that strong mayor power doesn't need any more than $40,000, and it's only part-time. It's recognized that a mayor receives supplementary compensation from other boards. Being compensated at 1.0, the Democratic mayor's schedule will prioritize Wilmot municipal affairs at any times of potential scheduling conflicts. Mayor receives all the same benefits as councillors. The mayor full-time, if full-time 1.0, they can't receive any outside compensation, no other secondary jobs. That's my opinion. The office of the mayor and council as a body shall have a 1.0 FTE administration assistant responsible to and accountable to only the mayor and councillors. Council needs an admin assistant to help keep track of the flow of reports and work plans and to support council's duty to supervise the actions of senior staff. It's in the Act.
About 40 seconds left.
All salaries go under the operation budget, so I'm talking about $250,000 plus benefits for 5 councillors and 6 people. We had one report cost almost $200,000 tonight. In context, the CEO, and that was all about, received in 2024 $225,000. That works out to, based on the population, $10.52 per person, not per taxpayer, per person. So I suggest that you assign internal tasks for some of these research reports to the CAO and the deputy CAO. They got the skills, they can do strategic plans, they can do all that kind of stuff. My bottom line recommendation is you do it yourselves. You make your recommendation to, you know the job, you know what you're worth, you know how much work is involved in this. I think you're worth what I just said you're worth. You're qualified people. You know what's going on. Thank you, Chris. You've been very patient. You've held back on the thing. It's up to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolf. I appreciate your delegation and your comments to council. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Dunstall.
Very. Through you, Mayor. Your one suggestion was that council just automatically get COLA so that they don't vote out of guilt. However, we do have to vote for all of the employees of the township. So we can give ourselves COLA, but we're still debating and voting on all of the other staff. That's your position?
I'm saying that you, if you're going to give COLA automatically to them, then you get COLA automatically.
Thank you.
One equals the other. No guilt. The only deductions from the budget were out of your own council budget. You didn't even lose a pickup truck.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Thank you for the delegation. So, do members of council have questions regarding the report or general comments about the debate here? Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I think that at a time when last year, what was it, 18%, this year it's 9%, at a time that we're having this discussion is tone deaf for most of our constituents. I think that having council vote when probably most of council will be running again and some will be running for mayor seems pretty self-serving for it to be something that we decide ourselves. So I just wanted to put it out there. I don't believe that my constituents would support council getting an automatic COLA or getting much of an increase, and I just want to get that out there. Thank you.
Councillor Sidhu.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick note that council over the last 3 years, by declining any raises or COLA, equated to about $15,000 to $18,000 over 3 years. So as much as we can give ourselves a pat on the back and say we didn't take COLA, we didn't take a raise, really didn't move the needle much. Now, referring to this report, looking it over and seeing the Pesci report, I am inclined to say we can do an internal review from staff. They have the Pesci report to refer to. They have their own due diligence that they can do internally, and I think as far as saving money and making a streamlined approach, that would be a recommendation that I would be moving forward with.
Councillor Cressman, I see you, Councillor Dunstall, after. Go ahead.
Yes. since I vented last meeting, I will try to breathe deeply and hold my comments. But I think as well what I brought up was former clerk Boss had done a comparative analysis which built on the Pesky report and then looked at applying COLA to what were the suggested rates of comparators at the 50th percentile in the Pesky report, and so I think we have a lot of information to do an internal report that has a good solid base, and as such I would I realize it isn't a motion, but I would agree with Councillor Sadhu that internal analysis can get us in the ballpark on this one.
Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. One of the points that I think is important is that it's not the amount of money. I understand Councillor Sadhu is throwing out a $15,000 number, which in the grand scheme of things is not huge. It's the point that we're asking our constituents every time we come to budget that they have to suck it up. We're sorry, we didn't get us here, but we're here now. So I'm sorry that you have to pay this, but this is what you have to pay. So from my perspective, it's not the amount, it's that if we're asking our constituents to step up and hurt a little bit, then I think it's something that this council should also do.
Councillor Martin, did you want to get in on this?
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor Wilkinson. I'm in favor of an internal review. I really don't have any comments on further than that.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes, further to Councillor Dunstall's comments, as a taxpayer, I have a pecuniary interest when it does increase, and this year it'll be over, for my personal operation, it'll be over $10,000 that I'll be paying in taxes. So every increase certainly comes home, and it's borne. Granted, I have a different operation than most people who have a home that they're living in, but at the end of the day, I feel it like every other taxpayer. I also have always felt that part of the role of a councillor is their civic responsibility, and that is a portion of what they do because they're looking to leave the township and the corporation in a better shape, and they can't be expected to get money for absolutely everything. So I think it's a balancing act, what is appropriate, but also what is my civic responsibility to should I be bearing? I'm not looking at this as a full-time position, and the mayor pointed out, not everybody is blessed to be in the stage of their career that I am, but at the end of the day, I think we all look at different organizations we belong to and contribute to that we aren't expecting any payment from, and it's mainly to contribute to the betterment of the community. So I think some of that comes to bear in this position.
So I think this is a good conversation. In my initial observations, where I was quite pleased with the information that was brought back forward, and I know Clerk Boz had done quite a bit of work, and seeing the Pesky report again was helpful. I'm in general in support of option 3, which is the internal administrative review, because I think, again, we are relying on a data set that we've seen, that we know the report's been done, and we can trust our staff to come back with something that would reflect that. And I think first and foremost, this is not about council or ourselves voting ourselves a raise today, but the point of this policy is to review remuneration once per term and have those changes effective for the next term. This is not for us now, but rather for next term. And I think that helps us avoid conflicts and keep this process above board. I think that's important to mention because ultimately, look at, we've lived through this for the last 4 years. We know what this job entails. We know what the asks are. So I think it's fair for us to review this, accept a report back, and then make a choice and a recommendation moving forward, because ultimately, if everyone is going back out knocking on doors and looking for re-election, we'll have to hang our hat on this decision. But I think in general, in my conversations, I've had conversations with residents who have raised the fact that it doesn't pay a whole lot of money and the expectation of the level of work is maybe in excess of what is generally advertised. I've also heard from former councillors and other members of the public that have suggested, you know, if you fall behind, and this is something that this township has been past practice, if we fall behind, there may come a time in the future where we have to catch everything up, and that could be a huge cost. So keeping in line with maybe where staff are and looking at what we brought staff forward in terms of compensation level and then adjusting via COLA moving forward might be a very fair way of going about this. So, you know, it's about picking a method this time around, and I think option 3 is consistent with nearby municipalities. We have a good chunk of data that we can look at. So I think bringing the Pesce work forward into the discussion as well, comparing it against the charts provided, we can receive a defensible recommendation that is based on statistics and comparators. Now, where we should land, that's a conversation that we should have. I appreciate the delegation this evening and your strong support for getting compensated for this role. And I want to be clear to citizens, you know, I understand that people are dealing with real cost pressures. And a lot of citizens may not have seen some of the increases that match inflation. And to be fair, sitting in a publicly elected seat, it is very uncomfortable to talk about giving yourself a raise, especially when we're dealing with taxpayers' dollars. But again, I want to bring this back to the honest realities that if pay is set too low, do we quietly narrow who can afford to serve and who chooses to serve? Do you risk turning local government into something that only retirees or independently wealthy or folks with unusually flexible jobs can do? And I don't know that that is a healthy, if that's healthy for representation. We want to attract good candidates to this role so that we can have fruitful discussions that are well informed. So I think, you know, the policy itself and a lot of the material that would support, say, remuneration should be fair and reasonable and should be developed to a point where it attracts a diverse and representative pool of candidates. So I want that to be brought back forward, and I want it to be seen as fair by taxpayers. And hopefully that when we receive this information back, you know, with a good conversation next time around and the openness and the respect for taxpayers, we can make a decision that's fair for council and the future council, whomever may or may not be here. So I would say that for the public that are watching and interested in this topic, please provide feedback that would be constructive and respectful and useful. And I think I would ask our staff as to where that should be directed. I don't know if that should come to individual council or if it should be directed to the clerks, but I would certainly value public input through this process in addition to what is being presented to us here. And that's what I would have to say on this. But Councillor Cressman.
So after our discussion, I would move a motion that we take advantage, or that we take advantage of number 3, internal administrative review, and use the information that has been generated in the 2 different reports that have been identified in our discussion.
That is moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Sadhu. So we are looking at option 3. Is there any further questions or debate on that? Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I didn't think that we were allowed to vote on something here that I thought it had to be voted on at the next council meeting, because this is the committee of the whole. So we applied that to the one. I'm not sure what the difference is here.
Through the chair, I am the chair. Force of habit. I don't sit in the seat. So my understanding is that we are referring this back, but it is direction that the staff essentially can bring this back to the next council meeting. Maybe I'll verify with the clerk here, but are we referring this, or are we giving direction at this point because of the time nature?
Through you to council, this matter will go on the March 23rd council agenda for approval, but you can choose to fill the blank in, which is what has been moved to amend to insert the internal administrative review as the option that will come forward for final approval on March 23rd.
Thanks for the clarification. I think that that's fair. You know, and I wouldn't anticipate that we'd have too many major changes on that meeting, so that might give staff a heads up to potentially start working on something. That's at least my view. But any other further questions on this? I did have a question to staff before in terms of public feedback on this. Is there a particular area that should be directed?
To the mayor, yes, it's generally the purview of the city clerk, of the township clerk. And I think in this case, I'm going to look to the Director of Corporate Services, Harold Krafka, to lead this. But I think for ease of the public, figuring out whose email should I use, clerks@wilmot is the easiest one, @wilmot.ca.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Director of Corporate Services, anything to add? Okay, very good. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. Just quickly, I just want to make sure that the public knows, because I've already received 2 emails on this subject, so people are watching. Just want to make sure they know that when we approve this report, we are not approving any kind of raise, nothing like that. That will be discussed at the next meeting. So I just want to make sure that the public is aware of that, as I'm receiving emails as we speak. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunstall. I agree. This is purely for the review, and it will be tabled for future discussion.
His mic.
Oh. Thank you, Councillor. Okay. Seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor of the amended motion? That passes unanimously. Okay. Moving to, pardon me. Thank you to the clerk. So we have passed the amendment, which is to insert option 3. We're now going to vote on the overall motion, which is to accept this report and refer it to the council meeting and initiate option number 3. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Moving on to announcements. Do council members have any announcements? All right, we'll start with Ward 1 here. Councillor Crossman.
Yes. Just wanted to announce the Board of Trade pancake breakfast on March the 15th. For those of you that are Julius Caesar fans, that's the Ides of March. So if you have to beware, so be it. And the cost is $15 for adults. Children between ages 7 are between 6 and 12 are $7, and preschool are free. And of course, there's pancakes, maple syrup from the award-winning Maple Tap farm, just north of New Dundee, scrambled eggs, and coffee and juice. So, and it's from 10 in the morning till 1 p.m. So, and I know Councillor Dunstall will say that somebody in New Hamburg sells cheaper pancakes, but we're using our funds that we generate for community efforts.
A2 Brutus? Who will play that role? Moving on, Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. And not less expensive, but better tasting for sure. I did want to note that March 8th is International Women's Day. It celebrates the achievement of women across the world. The New Hamburg Board of Trade is actually sponsoring an event. It's already filled up, it's sold out, but I did want to mention that March 8th, International Women's Day. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further announcements, Councillor Cressman, your favorite time, I'll now read the recommendation that the meeting of March 2nd, 2026 be adjourned at 8:30 p.m. Mover, Councillor Cressman, seconder, Councillor Dunstall. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Good night, everyone.